welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and tonight we are joined by a guest who is making her probably at least third appearance. She is a favorite of our show, and I dare say on the verge of becoming a regular, which I'm so excited about having. And with that being said, just got off of doing an amazing, what was it, 6 hour presentation, the Matrix Rehab Tour.
Yeah, it was
So,
close to that, yeah.
so
After
we're,
after the cuts, we cut a little bit, so it's down to 4 hours on the rewatch.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we
That,
cleaned up
that
some
seems
dead
more
things.
doable.
Right?
So, I'm going to hand it over to the
Mm.
one, the only, amazing, knows more than more people probably dream about, Mary Beaver.
Thank you. So, I forgot what we were talking about. I'm sorry. We
Well,
got sidetracked in the
actually,
background.
we were discussing how on your show, your presentation, the Matrix Rehab Tour, that Tyler Koala of Journey to Truth
Yeah.
hosted. Shout out to him. And you and I were talking about how you had said to me, you should check this out. You know, you might get some questions to ask. And I was like, I came up with 2 pages front and back of a little steno pad, and we were talking about how, yeah, you mentioned this, but nobody went here. And you were like, yeah, everybody was overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah. It was there was a lot. It's a lot of information, but it should honestly keep a lot of people busy who are hosts. But then you're gonna have a lot of new people coming up too that do watch this. So it's part of the deprogramming. That we did have a video that I was given that will help deprogram people to remember who they are. That way you don't have to rely on a whole lot of other people telling you what may or may not be true because you're really the only one that knows. So, there are a lot of spiritual healers out there. There's a lot of people that do have special talents and can see certain things, but you're really the one that has those memories, whether it be water memory, muscle memory, or spiritual memory. It really just comes down to you and what you experience, not just in this life, but in other lives in the past. And some people can even foresee future possible, events. I'm not gonna say that there's not gonna be, seers for future events. The ones that I did know had access to the looking glass, so I don't know if they were actually really genuine, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, I know 700 years of the future and then not say how I got that. I'm not going to play off that I'm a spiritual being and I see the future. I got it from the looking glass. So I got the history books from the future, which is kind of cool. But then it's like when I did the my first conference, I started to make these posters and event stuff based on what was written in the future. And then I was like, I did make fun of it at the conference. So I was like, I changed it into my own words because I wasn't sure if there's like copyright infringement in the future.
Right.
Because these were books that were really in
Although,
history.
technically speaking, if they're historic books from the future, they haven't been written yet. So they'd be copywriting you.
Well, I don't know. See, no, only time travelers know how time works. I mean, we've been in a time traveling situation with the timelines, and people don't realize I've been rewound quite a few times. I mean, we've probably been doing this for 10 years, and it only feels like when did COVID start? 5 years ago?
Yeah.
So we're literally ourselves lost in time, but where we don't know because we're all merging the timelines. Whatever it is on the permanent timeline, that's what we'll see. So that's why I always tell people, I'm like, nobody is wrong, nobody is right, because everybody has multiple timelines out there that are merging into the one timeline. Now, what doesn't stay on the permanent one timeline? And again, my friend Apollo and I have had these talks, and I like her description of it better. Is it's whatever lands on the permanent timeline. I've had a lot of timelines, but it doesn't mean that that should affect the permanent one timeline, right? We have the duality of reality. Try to say that a few times. And, you know, there's going to be people that have been in those other timelines, and then there's going to be people that don't end up on the final timeline, but it's like you'll see them and you'll be like, I know you, right? And then you don't know them because they didn't end up on your permanent timeline. But you have some memory of another timeline where you did know them. So there's that kind of vuja de or deja vu moment.
Right, and that brings up a couple questions for me. But you had mentioned Looking Glass, and MN has a question for you about that. They're asking, what do you think about the Looking Glass not being able to show the future for now? Have you heard about that?
I have. Um, okay, so again, if a lot of you have followed me in other podcasts, um, there's a real owner of this world, and then there's what we call the false gods that are pretending to be here. They have contracts with the real owner because it's a negotiation thing. It's like, when we come into business and a business comes in when you're struggling and it says, "Hey, we can help you out, sign this contract." It's a negotiation thing. All these false gods gave the false impression that they were going to come down here and fix our world, right?
Right.
And obviously they made it worse. Cuz I don't think anything got better. I think it all just got worse, and then we got harvested and all this other stuff. But with the Looking Glass, from my knowledge, the real owner of the earth, and the co-owner, who would be creator and the sun, um, they didn't break the Looking Glass. There's, as in heaven is on earth. I'm not trying to get biblical, but we mock heaven. Our structure, they have courts, they have administrations, they have different levels of government up there. So do we. So somebody up there with time erased the timelines because, and the reason being was because the good and the bad were messing with, see, they're messing with my chakras. Hold on. I'm choking over here. I'm not allowed to tell you. Um, so the good and the bad were manipulating the timelines so none of us could move forward. That's why everybody at some point after 2020 felt stuck. Like we were stuck on repeat, Groundhog's Day for, a lot. So I believe in 2021 or somewhere in 2022, the Looking Glass, they said it was broken or it got destroyed. It didn't get destroyed, okay? It's alchemy. But there are no timelines right now. The permanent timeline restarts in 2083, because that's the history I have. So right now we are making our own history without interference.
And that brings up an interesting question I have is we're talking about, the permanent timeline. Do we get to pick which one of our timelines we want as the permanent, or does the leader of the planet get to say, this is your permanent timeline? Have fun.
I think it depends on what's going on around you. Like, be aware of your surroundings. And I guess if you're a manifester, the manifestors are the ones that can manifest the reality, but they can't do it without the other energies. It's like, again, it's like the beehive. Without the worker bees and the magistrative bees, you there's no, and the queen, there's an order. So all of them create this beautiful hive, frequency and healing, and then they spread, the nectar around the world and things flourish. So we're in that kind of category. So when you have people you fall in sync with, then, and in a positive direction, I think that's what brings the timelines into a stage of final merger, would be the word I would use.
And what I find interesting is, talking about timelines is there's a lot of people that are talking about all the timelines are merging into one timeline. And it's interesting you say they were erased to have one timeline. So it's kind of interesting how everyone has different perspective of what's happening to the
Well,
timelines.
you have to understand what time really is. Time is, and there's multiple times, not just timelines. You're the reason there's a timeline. So when you think etherical energy and you see, when you look at how light projects, it's not a solid. It's microfibers of billions and billions of strands of light, tiny little light. That's what we are. When you're born, you start that timeline. Your timeline then merges with other already existing timelines to create this. Oh God, I wish I had the bigger words for it, but my mind is blocked. My vocabulary. I would say, I don't know how to word it. It's kind of a beautiful thing though. The timelines are what creates this reality. And again, evil can't create. I know people want to believe that the evil God created the world down here in Lucifer's kingdom, but he didn't. It was taken over. That's why we fell. And oh, you know what would be a good scenario? The movie Trolls. Uh, the cartoon movie Trolls. Um, Sorry, a call was coming in.
Oh,
Where it talked about the strings of music.
right. Yeah.
Okay, so that is what a timeline is. The timeline starts when you're born, and then you have a certain amount of time that interfaces with the etherical energies on the planet. So without us, without the planet's timeline, everything has a time. It's just what timeline you're on. That's why if you left this planet and you went to another planet, you would have to get in sync with that time. Like Mars, I think they're what, on an 18 or a 38-hour day or something like that. That would affect our bodies in a negative manner because we're on a 24-hour, right?
If you're
So,
lucky.
right. So you have to do things in order to adjust to different time sequences. Time is only a reality here because we don't know how it's used in the celestial manner because they've taken our memories away from it.
So I wonder when you look at people who are like saying, I maximize the amount of time in a day, and it seems like they're getting so much more done than others. Are they tapping into the ethereal timeline and time frame to where they actually do have more time, but to us it looks like they're fitting it all, cramming it into our time because that's the only time we can see?
No, you can control time when you learn alchemy. Uh, you study tesseract, and other. What are the words? geometric celestial scaling, I think it is. You can control your time. Now, if you tell yourself I don't have time, then you've eliminated the possibility to get everything done that you tasked yourself with. That's why people who do make charts actually achieve things better, because they put a time limit on everything. So that's how you can, in a shorter way, control time. But to do it consciously or subconsciously, you have to know how to be a master alchemist. But yeah, etherical energy comes into it, but only for the time sequence. Again, time, like I am on your timeline right now. We met in a permanent timeline. I know that I've had other interviews with other people, but in my resets, those videos disappeared. So I was no longer on their timeline because we got rewound.
So that kind of makes sense because I always view, like, when it comes to time, I always leave with plenty of time, and like 99% of the time, it's like when I think I'm going to be late, I'll message going, hey, I'll be a few minutes late. And I actually arrive a minute early or right on time. And I'm always like, why? When I message people, I'm going to be late. Am I never late? So I'm wondering if that's like the way my mind works the timeline of saying, okay, you now declared this, but we know you said you left with plenty of time, so you are going to arrive on time, even though you think you're going to be late.
Right. And if you are late, it's because something in your future was devastating. And if you would have made it on time, you probably would have died or been seriously injured.
Yeah. Iron Bear says, so we are the sands in the hourglass.
We can be. Our essence can definitely be.
You know,
We create time when we're born, because now you have time to experience life in this suit. Your suit is time. Your soul is not time. It's eternal. So it has all the time in like the metaverse. But what time do you have in this body?
right.
That's how you learn to control time.
And I love when people always will come to me and will say, well, time is a natural construct. And I'm like, no, it's not. When you look at like biblical age or the medieval age or in that time frame, nobody had a watch to look at and go, okay, we're going to invade this country at 30 past the hour. It's like that was no time. It was either you went when it was daytime or it was nighttime. That was pretty much the only time you knew. Or seasonal time, like, oh, it's time to harvest. Oh, it's time to plant. It wasn't until later we were like, okay, at 3 o'clock, this is going to happen. It's like that never existed before. So time in reality is a man made construct. And it surprises me how many people sit there and go, no, this is natural. It's like, no, it's not.
It is natural because it goes along your natural design. But we're not using it in the way that it's meant to be used, because we're not supposed to be aging before 1,000 years. Technically, if you're under 70 years old, you're just a teenager.
I like the sound of that. But then
Right.
again, I'm like, I really don't want to relive my teenage years.
Well, you would live them with what you've learned, but your body would age regress back to what it's supposed to, because your cells age with the time that it was supposed to be given. So again, if you have to break time down in all of its constructs to understand the true path you were supposed to be on here or on this planet, with the time you were given. So how did you lose the 1,000 years? That's
That's
what
a
we got
good
to think
question.
about.
Yeah.
Where did it go? I mean, Abel got married when he was 72 years old. He hit puberty when he was 63. So he was a teenager. People think he died when he was 14 or 15. No, he was like 140. So
Yeah.
Jesus wasn't 33, he was 133. Because if he was 33, he'd have looked like a 7-year-old. So, because he was given the perfection in that whole story is being missed because if you say he was perfect, but he only lived to be 33, then he wasn't perfect. So we're constantly hitting each other with these things, that the lies and the misconceptions and the duality of words. God said, and he quoted it, you have 1,000 years of life. That is the gift from Creator. And he said, I have 1,000 years of life, but he died at 33. So how is it that the other perfect person, Adam and Eve, lived to be 1,000 years old in perfection, but Jesus comes down as the Son of God, even more perfect, but he dies at 33. Do you see where that comes in? Because it's funny, I do have the timeline for the genealogy, and there's a line. Okay, so when you look at the years that they were born, everybody was in their hundreds, right? Except
Right.
Jesus. There's a negative sign in front of 33. So that means they took the number out showing his real age of death.
Well, that, and I like to bug people by saying, who decided when the 0 point was in our calendar system? That was 0, the day he arrived, because
No, he
everything
actually
before
wasn't
that
born.
runs backwards in the calendar system we have, and everything then runs forward. I'm like, but who set that up? Because
That is part of the celestial grid. So it's every 25,000 years. So the era of Christ is going to be 25,000 years. The era of David, which was his father before him, who was his father? I'm losing my memory on the names. That was a 25,000 year cycle. Each one is a 25,000 year cycle. So that's when it zeroes out. And Christ wasn't born on day 0. He was him and his brother or cousin, however you want to look at that. One was born on the 5th year, and one was born on the 12th year. Mary was born in between, I think on the 8th year.
okay,
They
yeah, I
were
looked
considered the
up.
Trinity.
Yeah, I looked up for you. It's who was David's dad,
Oh,
and ironically, it's the first thing I saw was it goes Jesse, and I was like, Jesse, that is not a biblical name. And then it goes, look somewhere else. It goes Jesse or Yeshai. I'm like, okay, that sounds a little bit more like it. And some are, and they're saying like, no, he wasn't the son of Saul, like people thought he was.
there were ancient kings, because I can go back to my bloodline. Ancient kings and queens of what they call ancient Europe, ancient Wales, back to the ancient Jewish people.
Yeah,
I
he
can't
was
think
the
of the names.
grandson of Boaz and Ruth.
Yeah. So, but again, that history has been kept from us to show that there are eras of time. So the Christ era that we're in doesn't start or end with Jesus Christ. It started the era of that energy frequency. And he was the Messiah to bring the message that said, hey, this is where you guys are at. You're no longer in that energy. It's like like education. When you go from high school or middle school to high school, okay, this is a whole different education, right? So
Right.
the eras are different educations. It's like the same thing, different era, different technologies. different messages, but similar messages. It's what, so in the master exit document that I have, it says it in the first parts, to the language of the times. So the apostles and all of them who did the master exit, their language of the times was ancient Phoenician or Sumerian or, Egyptian, Gnostic, whatever it was way back in that day, because that was the language of the times. Right now, we are in the Christ language of the times, being English as the dominant language. But then you have the Hebrew language and you have the Chinese language. You have a little bit more other languages, because Jesus, after he did his book, went to Egypt. He was given the gift of, the perfection of life, like the celestial chambers, if you will, at the Egyptian time. So he was down there, and he came back speaking 18 languages. He could turn water into wine. He could part the seas.
Go walk on water.
Can walk on water.
So as we're talking about these timelines, Derek, his moniker's Woo Riders DG, is asking how far off our current timeline are we in years by date? I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to.
I'm not really sure, because a lot of times we miss the rewinds. One of my rewinds, I was rewound a whole year. It was like 13 months, 7 days or something, and it came in the form of a text message, which was so weird. And so I was kind of tripping on it, and I called a few people, and I'm like, I feel like I need to like decode these numbers, and I'm not a number decoder. If it doesn't have a dollar sign in front of it, I'm not going to find it. But I had a few people look at it, and I broke it down to like, oh my gosh, because one of the numbers was the year. It was for, let's see, last year we were in 2024, so it was for 2023. On the same date, a year ago from that date, and then a couple months. So I got the download that I got rewound, and that's how the heavens told me. They sent me a text message, and when I called the doctor's office, oh, that's what it was. I had a doctor's appointment, and I walked in, and the gal was like, she's like, "Hi, Mary, how are you?" And I'm like, "Great, I'm here for my appointment." And she's like, "Oh, you had an appointment?" And so she's looking, and she's like, "I don't have you on the calendar." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I have it on a text message." So we were literally looking at this text message, and they took a picture, because they were like, even nobody's gonna believe us if we don't take a picture of this. And it
Yeah,
was
isn't
like,
that
it was a
sad?
trip.
That's a little sad that we have come to the point to where, unless there's photographic proof, we have no level of belief in it. And I'm like, how did that happen? Where did that originate from? Why did we start that? But a deeper question I have is, when we do the rewinds and we are going back to like the permanent timeline, are we going to be restored to our 13-month original natural years, or are we going to stay in the 12-month and keep going with that?
To be honest, I'm not sure, because there's more than just the two calendars that you guys know about. There's more, and it depends on your level of consciousness. It depends on if you're a basic person down here, an ascended master, or somebody like Merlin. Those are different calendars, because again, time works differently as to your ascended consciousness.
Right,
Does that make
and
sense?
it does, and that's why, like, when you hear of the Norse traveling, and I know people like to call them the Vikings, but they would gauge their time by moon cycles. Like, oh, I've been around for the 5 moons now. And it's like, that's how they were telling time. And so it's like, yeah, it makes sense that, everybody may have their own different calendar system because each culture
Right.
developed their own.
Well, that, and it depended on what part of the continents you lived. So a lot of the islanders used the calendar sequence of the turtle, and people who lived in the mountains relied on like star constellations, moons, eclipses, anything that could give them a sign, and like you said earlier, seasons was considered a calendar time.
Wow, I'm starting to feel like Tyler right now. I had so many questions, and I'm like, wait, where, what? But yeah, and so I guess one question I have for you that we were talking about with your Matrix rehab, you had mentioned, and I asked you about this before we started, and you were like, yeah, that's interesting. You were gonna, I don't know if you had time to look into it, but you said when we all reach a certain point, we're going to return to our home, which is our star beginning. And I had said, well, what if you have an Arturian who's married to, say, a Lyran? Whose home do they go to? Do the couple split and go back to their original homes, or do they get to pick which home to go to?
So, because this is being recorded, I don't want to give anybody the misconception of like what reality is right now to everybody. But when you realize what marriage is to us right now, you're not legally married to each other. You're only married to the state. So, if you decide to do the ascension process of the master exit through the book of life, you will be presented with a treaty of marriage. So, what happens with that? Because again, there's other worlds already established. Some have to be rebuilt. Some are, they're there. So, they'll bring in the interstellar laws of marriage between worlds. They are treaty contracts. And I don't know what that individual contract looks like for the different people. But when you get there and you get your memories back, and they do have counsel for, not, I'm not talking attorney counsel, I'm talking stellar councils, that
Right.
are from the individual governments that will, if you want to stay together or if you want to separate, regardless of offspring, they will find a way to bring in a treaty of peace that has to do with the different planetary movements and the properties and the children. But technically, as a slave, you're not married. So you're only married to the state, and the state dallies out your secret inheritance.
Okay. That makes sense. And you were talking about something that I picked up on and was curious about was the Akoshians. You were saying, I think I'm pronouncing that right, that they were, in charge and were running stuff. And then I was like, and they were with the German faction. And I
Oh, the
was,
Hitler ones.
right.
Hi-yo.
And so I was wondering, is this who created one, the Nachtwaffen, as we call it? I don't know if that's the term they use, which is the Nazi secret space program that we call it. And the other question is, how do we get free of them?
You have to do the book, the master exit, because while you're waking up, you're gonna be angry. You're gonna learn things, and you're gonna be mad. But you can't stay mad because we can be mad at everybody all day long, but it wasn't the citizens of those races that put us where we are today. The the bad leaders, for the most part, are already gone. They've been hung, they've been tried, they've been treasoned, whatever. They're no longer a problem. There might be a few, you know, running around, but they're few. The struggle that we see in this reality right now, again, is a war in our own mind, because we need to be able to identify why our lives are not calm, why we feel we're being attacked. But if you weren't being attacked and you were still in a mind control situation, but the world around you is free, but your mind is not, you wouldn't try to fix it, because you're comfortable, money's good, kids are good, you're in the delusion of happiness. So we got to shake up your mind so you figure out how to get out of it and decide which way you're going to go. It's easier when you have the crossroads, because you can backpedal and go backwards on top of having three other choices. But when you get to the fork in the road where we're at right now, you only have two ways to go. You ascend out as a master of your reality, and you do what you're going to do, or you go the other way, which is the Peter version, occupation of planet Earth, which is it's another, either it's going to harvest you or it's going to partially ascend you and you become a subject of a king or a lord or somebody else. You're a higher position, but you choose to get on the wrong ship, if you will.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody wanting to actually voluntarily do that.
You would be amazed. I didn't think that either, but here we are.
Oh, I know. That's like looking at the
They
world
don't
we're in.
know. That's just it. They don't know. Mike, they think they're getting on this benevolent ship because they've lived so long in the lies. Truth scares people. So if the promise sounds better than the truth, those people are like, me first, me first.
Right.
Because it's scary. I'm not
And
gonna lie, I was a little scared. If I didn't grow up fighting everything, I probably would have been one of those people, first one on the ship. Woo, here I am.
it reminds me of, it was funny as I was listening to someone talking, and they were, talking about sky watching and calling in UFOs. And they were, going, yeah, it's really, great that people are doing this. But when you call in crafts, you got to be aware of what crafts you're calling in, because if a triangular shows up, chances are you are meeting your own government. So you probably would sit there and be like, if you realize that, going, not you, I was looking for the other guy. And they're like, so they're going, yeah, you need to stop being so excited and calling down everything and go, who do you really want to show up, and call those people.
Right. Well, honestly, don't call anybody. I mean, believe it or not, a lot of them don't like you. So, and they just want your DNA. So what is that going to look like if you get on that ship? You lose your free will. Your free will is here. You have the free will to choose which way you go. Once you get on that ship, you don't. They own you. You become a product of whatever civilization. You can say, "Oh, I know for a fact this is what I am." But how do you know? Because somebody else told you, who said they're spiritual, and you felt the humming and the buzzing. How do you know they're not dealing with shadow demons? Nobody knows. They could have played with the
Right.
Ouija board when they were 12 years old.
Not me, but yeah.
I'm just saying,
Oh,
right?
I
We know
know.
nothing about people. I know that there's really good spiritual people out there. I have one. I keep her a secret because She's very special, and I don't want to overload her. But I've also been around people who would pray over me, and like chaos hit me, and I'm like, why did this just happen? And it wasn't because they're bad people. Sometimes their guides are demons, and they don't know it, because even demons can wear masks. They're shadows.
Right.
They can look like butterflies. They can look like fairies. They can look like jellyfish. They're not limited to our 3D reality.
No, they're not. And speaking of things like that, MN has a question for you. Have you seen giants taller than us wearing a black smart suit, very tactical looking, with a red line on both sides, left and right? Just curious if you have any experience with them.
I've been in the space program, and I've seen some tall everything. I'm not saying I saw anybody that wore that suit. Our tactical suits were all black. We would have maybe an emblem off to the side, kind of like Space Force has their emblem. Just so you know, Space Force is the future program for Star Trek. That's a real merger. Star Trek was a future thing that you guys were being shown. Uh, it depended on what you do, but and in what in reality, because I've worked with different beings. Most of them look human, but a lot of them don't look human, and some are hybridized, like spliced. Like you have owl people and cat people and dog people, but they don't all look like dogs. They're just spliced with the DNA. I don't look like a jaguar. I'm spliced with jaguar DNA. There's different levels of different. I mean, most of the tall giants I dealt with were ambassadors, royals, because the high level Delta super soldiers escorted the Imperial ships, because you have to have the best protecting those people. So a lot of it was me guarding planets, mineral planets, in my Space Force, or not Space Force, super soldier space expeditions, or escorting royals or transporting other beings.
Yeah, and I find it interesting. We all talk about we're wanting the Star Trek future, but being a fan of the Star Trek, universe, I have to say there are some Star Trek futures I would like to skip because I feel like been there, done that down here. Don't really want to go out there and start doing that again. And
Well,
by
the
that,
Star Trek was a future, what was going to happen in our future. But again, what that's why everybody was coming back into the past, coming back into the future, manipulating here, taking people from there. There was people brought from the future to this time. I met one, and the Vatican kept him. He's not a good person right now, but he probably could have potentially been a great asset to the future timeline. But he was brought here to manipulate something, and then I was brought from the past to this time in order to bring a frequency that was much higher to this era in order to help it ascend. So the manipulation between the timelines, space and time, and the dualities of reality is a real thing. You can, once you learn how to do it, you don't actually affect it. You don't knock things off its grids. So the future that we knew we were going to have in these movies, it's changed. And the reason being was because they knocked out the timelines for right now so we can start fresh, and the good guys or the bad guys can't go in and manipulate it because they think they're doing a good job by stopping each other from doing something, but really it stops all of us. We all get stuck in the void. And that's where I was told, I needed to come out and talk about that stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to do it unless I'm protected, because all the people who tried to come out and, talk about this stuff died. Now I'm not going to die.
right.
Not
I don't
today, not
blame you.
tomorrow.
And I appreciate you sticking around and, helping us with everything. And as we're talking about, like you're saying, like the timelines, have changed and everything, and the Star Trek that we originally were looking at's not the new one. And I can't help but go, we talk about Hollywood sometimes is soft disclosure of what's going on. And Star
Some of them
Trek
are a hard
rebooted
disclosure.
with a whole new timeline. They,
Right.
they call it the Kelvin timeline. And so I'm wondering, is that their way of, validating what you're saying about, yeah, the way it was isn't anymore. So now we're on this. And so they're showing, yeah, it's a new timeline, new everything.
Right. Yeah, I would say so. And what you take from it. Like if you so recently after I did that tour, these the God, what was it? Um He-Man.
Yeah.
You remember those cartoons?
He-Man, Voltron, all those, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I literally yesterday I was having so many weird downloads that movie or cartoon series like that started popping up in YouTube, but it was talking about the Anunnaki and the lizard people and all these things coming to Earth, and I'm like, where were these cartoons when I was growing up? They
Uh,
literally have been there the whole time, but as you raise your consciousness, you can't see them until you're awake enough, I guess, to see them, but there's steps to waking up. And
yeah.
it's quite amazing. Yeah, Thundercats for real.
Yeah. And
But that was the Lyran Wars, right?
right.
So,
And what's interesting to me too is that, everybody likes to say, "Oh, I'd like this movie to, be made, or this would could be made. Look at the cast and everything." But they're actually taking He-Man. They're taking the Thundercats, I think, even, and Voltron, and are making them live action movies. And I'm
yeah,
like, what? I'm like, what is with the resurgence in GI Joe and Transformers are merging, and so it's like, what, has Hollywood gone? It's my mind is like, has Hollywood gone through every idea and now pulling back from the past, or is there a reason they're pulling from the
there's
past?
a reason because look at the quality of cartoon. It was in what, two dimension, 2D art?
Pretty much, yeah.
And then we went to Pixar, which was the 3D art. And then I swear to God, Avatar is like 8D art from
No
another
kidding.
planet. I think they're showing us the real characters. I know that's what they said when they gave me access to the Star Trek series and like where they keep all this information. I'm like, isn't this from Star Trek? And they were like, yes, but those are real people. They look like that because when that came out, there were no masks like that. You didn't have art like that. You didn't paste clay on somebody's face. I mean, look at the um what's his name? The Grinch, the movie Grinch.
Oh,
Uh
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, and he was complaining just being in that suit for like 25 minutes was making him bipolar.
Yeah.
And these people are doing series every day.
Yeah, and I gotta say, it blew my mind when you said in your presentation
Excuse me.
the aliens in Star Trek were real. They weren't people in the mask, and I was
Yeah,
like,
they weren't.
that just was wild because it's like we're so used to today. Makeup artists can make anybody look like anything, but
Today,
to
but not
go
back
back,
then.
yeah, and to go back and look at and going, yeah, they didn't
But they
have those
will, like
people.
today, they have the technology to make it look like they made those masks. So they're trying to trick people into thinking, because they have all the 3D art now. They're like, oh, look, this is what they did. But then it's like, wait a minute. you didn't have that kind of camera setting back then to even sit there and film them doing the mask on those people back then.
Except, then it makes me wonder, like the Mission Impossible series, because sometimes they did have little things that they would pull the mask off, and it was like a little alteration here or there.
Yeah, but
But
that was still in the 2000s. That wasn't the
no, that was in
1960s.
the 1960s.
The
I'm,
mask?
no, I'm talking about the original Mission Impossible series
Oh,
that they based the movies off of. So I can't help wondering if that was their way of trying to introduce us to the idea of, oh, we can make people look like, so we would think everybody was in a mask and not being real.
I just know the military version back then. If you needed to fool the AI cameras or security, you would just take those stamps when you go to the nightclub and you have to have like a green light.
Right.
So you get that kind of pen and you put dots on your face and you malfunction the AI.
I may have to try that.
Or you do stripes. People put stripes on their face and the AI can't zone in on your features.
I wonder if I could do like lightning bolt tattoos. Like
Right?
you really wonder
The
what is
dark
going
light.
on.
They're like, "Who are you?" Yeah.
So as we're talking about who you had seen, Iron Bear 78 asked, and I didn't want to interrupt, was did you see any yellow U.S. Navy emblems on the black smart suits?
So it's funny you bring that up. Um, I was just going through. I actually texted James Rink to see, and please don't ask me for his number. I'm not going to give it out. That's just for anybody because people have asked me before to give out people's numbers. I was going through all the ships because the Vegas one is going to have two days. One's going to talk about the gene splicing, the medical equipment, and then the other one is about the super soldiers, all the spacecrafts from the Delta Quadrant, the Gamma Quadrant, our quadrant, the different quadrants, how to identify them, the names of all the spacecrafts, because I have all of those. I'm going to have big posters of them. They were all updated in 2024. Again, I have permission to show them. So I highly recommend you guys come out and see those. I think I'm going to auction some of these posters off too, if you guys want those. But it's only going to be an in-person auction. And it costs a lot of money to do these. These are really good quality for most of them. The ones that didn't turn out that great, I probably will just keep those. But the suits go with the ships. So there is intergalactic naval fleets. And again, I'm gonna bring you back to um, what's that show? Sequest.
Oh, I love Sequest.
Gotta love Sequest. Look at those ships, because some of our ships in space look like the ones in Sequest.
They even went into space, which I
Huh?
always thought was, they even went into space, which I thought was
It's zero gravity, so why wouldn't they be able to go into space?
like, this is a submarine. And they're like, we're on another world. It's like, what? And they even went through time. And it's
Right.
interesting how everybody who is like, they seems like sci-fi background in shows deals with either space or space and time. And I'm curious your thoughts of the show Doctor Who, being from the 1960s. I think it started till running today, and it's gone through several iterations and
Mhm.
everything. But I look at that show and watching it, and I gotta admit, there are times that I'm watching and going, This seems like an awfully familiar timeline, even though this show was made long before I was born, and I didn't even see it till today.
Right. I know that a lot of the disclosures have been happening since 1960. The 1920s was another time that they were trying to, and again, the communist group tried to take.
Oop. Okay, so hopefully she'll be back. Might have accidentally answered a call. We'll see you. And it's kind of funny to see her ear lights up right as she's getting a call. I haven't seen that on those AirPods. I think those are those earpods are AirPods. But we'll see if we can get her back. And that's really cool, Iron Bear. And I agree, Andres Delgado. Up. We lost connection. She is outside, so could be weather related. So we'll try and get her back, and hopefully, she'll be able to log back in quick. We'll see. And I just want to take this moment and thank you all for tuning in and watching and helping to support my show and guests like Mary. That is something that I'm really appreciative and truly grateful for. So I am so grateful beyond words. And I'll also take this moment and say if you could hit the like button and comment, that does help with the algorithms. And with that being said, she's back.
Sorry, I got booted out.
That's okay. I was telling everyone it was kind of funny because I knew you got a call because your ear started lighting up.
Right? Yeah, the little earpiece. I'm like, I was trying to like stop it, and then it kept calling back. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then eventually it just kicked me out altogether. I couldn't even answer the call, so sorry about that.
That's all right. It was interesting too that we were getting into the Doctor Who bit, and you're like, yeah, and all of a sudden a call comes in, like, yeah,
CIA
you can.
operatives, man. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what I like to say. Is apparently getting a little too close to
To home.
information they don't want out there, because all of a sudden, going 45 minutes without interruption, and all of a sudden it hits. It's like, huh, that was a little too perfectly timed.
Right? Trying to get back into the light. Sorry. There we are.
That's all right. But I wanted to ask real quick, and we are at the hour, so I don't know. Do you have time to answer one or two more questions?
I do, but then I do have to go because I have to go pick up my nephew from basketball practice.
Okay, well, one of them that I heard you talk about in the Matrix Rehab Tour, and I'm having so much fun plugging that show. Highly recommend you all check it out, and we'll tell you how to check it out before she leaves. But you had mentioned the angels, and that like seraphims were a certain level, then there was the archangels are a certain level, and the question I was thinking about was one, who decided which angels were supposed to come down, and share the knowledge in DNA, and who decided which level they were?
Creator, so the owners of the world. So there's a lot of different worlds. Again, I gave you the list, so if you want to post that for everybody, in the Alpha Quadrant, there's over 100 planets in our quadrant, and I don't know exactly who owns all planets. I do know that, again, the creator and the son, which would be the Jesus, he's a co-creator and or co-owner, and we're the co-creators. So they were the ones that decided. Again, they have councils, they have the court of God, they have a whole structure up there. They have attorneys, they have justice systems. We mock the heavens, so we are as them. So if we're in chaos, they're in chaos. I'm just going to let you know. So everybody's trying to fix the chaos and get back into balance. So, but creator would decide who came down to share that gene with the benevolent humans here. And it wasn't just in our planet, it happened in a lot of different planets. So it's how the natural evolution of life itself slowly upgrades. Like you get to experience the lower level and you just keep going up and up and up in the divine DNA until you, again, like a video game, you're climbing the ladder of DNA, but you're doing it through evolution. And evolution is, I find it to be probably a better way to upgrade than being mutated like Frankenstein on a table.
Yeah, no
I mean,
kidding. I'll pass
that's
on that
just my
one.
thought, right?
Atlantis did that, and see what happened to Atlantis.
Right. And then the Anunnakis, same thing. I mean, everybody gets excited about the Anunnakis, and I'm like, why? They will take your brain and put a frog brain in there to see how you function in a frog brain in a human body. There is nothing
Yeah.
exciting about those people.
I don't know if you can tell because you're on your phone, but I put up the planets
I
in
did
our
see it,
alpha
yeah.
quadrant.
Yep.
Okay.
So, yep. If anybody wants to look again, all that stuff's going to be in my webpage with the posters, and I'm going to have links to them. The maps, we did the maps, the spaceports. So those will be in there. It is a monthly membership. Don't get crazy about that. It is a monthly membership, but I'm going to put more information as we go, even so I can build you guys up for what's coming in the Vegas one. So you kind of have a heads up because I realized it was an overload at the first, and that was only 4 hours. This one's 2 days.
No, I
So
know. I was like,
Tylenol and ibuprofen, guys. Tyler from Journey to Truth also has a link. You can go. I think his is on um, Rumble, so you can see it on his or you can see it on mine. Either way, it's there. Different levels of membership. So
okay. And one other question I have for you is a lot of people are talking about shadow beings and the shadow realms right now. And I thought it was interesting that you said the Thans reign over the shadow realms, if I heard that right. And
the what?
the Thons or Thanes. Uh,
How do you spell it?
you never spelt it, so I just guessed Thans. I was thinking phonetic. It was in your talk, and you said that they pretty much are the ones who control the shadow realm and are there, and they're like vampires type. And so it was like I was sitting there thinking, okay, so is this why people who are stuck in the shadow realms are being drained? Because that's their food source. So they're
Well, right,
leaving.
because they're when we say damaged souls, Those guys are in eternity, which is a shadow realm. So they kind of talk about eternity in, I think it's the movie Thor, when that father, gets chosen by this dark weapon and he starts killing gods, and then they end up at the entrance to eternity. Do you remember seeing that movie?
That might be. Um, I don't think that was Thor. I think that was Guardians of the Galaxy. One of those.
No, it wasn't Guardians of the Galaxy. It was Thor was in it. It was talking about Thor, and then he couldn't wield the hammer anymore. And then what's her name wielded the hammer, but she was dying of cancer.
Oh,
Remember?
right. Love of Thunder, I think, is the one.
Yeah, something like that. And then at the end, he takes the guy's daughter because the father came to peace and let his daughter live, and he went into eternity. He swapped.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
right. So that's the shadow realm is where damaged souls heal. They can't live in a body anymore because they commit damage all the time. So the shadows are souls, whether again different levels. There's trillions of levels of beings, but to get here you have to go down that whole ladder of existence and then come back up. And then you have to have lived 48,000 years to get this body that we have right now. Some kind of hijacked it because they weren't supposed to come here. So we've been decompartmentalized and experimented on, and but the shadow demons or shadow entities, not all of them are bad. They don't they were from a long time ago. So the laws in which they remember existence being is not what our reality is today. So if they're taking you over, yes, they're siphoning your energy. If you astral project and you're not a master at it, shadow energies are going to get into you while you're astral projecting out into wherever because you left your body vulnerable. It's like leaving your spacecraft without anybody in it watching it, hoping nobody steals it. Right? Or a little bug gets on there and starts wreaking chaos in your wiring system. That's what shadow demons are. They're just failed species that couldn't live in a body, so they have to live their existence out in the shadow realms. And when we get sucked into those shadow realms, like where we're at right now, they can be harmful.
Right, and I just remembered you triggered in my memory that the however you pronounce the name was. I was asking were the ones that were here and were booted out, and so they went to the shadow realms. And so I was like, oh, are they?
Oh, you mean the jinn?
Could be the Jinn. You had a different name for them. It was a
Okay.
old
Well, there's
race.
a lot. Well, the jinn were one of them. They were a whole race. The genies, the jinn, terrible people. Terrible. Don't
Oh
make
yeah,
deals with them. Their deals are like the devil. They're after your body. They want your body because they're not allowed to have one. Because when they were created, they were given cosmic phenomenal powers. And like all things do when they get into power, they start trying to go after everybody.
yeah,
They went after the mega gods and creator and creation who made the metaverse because they wanted to be the ultimate.
yeah. So the last question I want to ask before we talk about where you can watch the Matrix Rehab tour, because I want to respect your time. And you talk about doing the book of life and gaining evidence and having evidence of this and that. How does one go about finding that evidence?
Well, when I did it, it starts off as a template. You make the template. Sorry, I'm trying to get better lighting here. You make the template into the book. So when you type up the template, you put your information in, you follow the directions, you have to make at least 3 original books. So you have to get 3 original birth certificates of you and your father's lineage, unless you don't know anything about your father. Um, the masters of the exit require the father's lineage. The only loophole is if you know the treasury you come from, but again, if you're found guessing, they will destroy you because then you come in like Aladdin, they're going to lock you up or kill you because you're stealing a treasury that doesn't belong to you. Um, it's you got to know what you're doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I followed directions. I did it to the book, and you clip it together. And as you gather your evidence, you slide it in between the certain pages, like your birth certificate, your NDA, your IRS, your EIN, and all the things that were related to your birth go behind, the first section, and they're all in sections. It's hard to describe without the template in front of me, but then you have evidence of property, so that'll go back there, and then you have minerals. So even if you don't have a mineral claim anywhere in your family, you still have minerals in your background, so you'll fill out a claim of minerals and put it in the behind the mineral section. And then when you bind it, you have to do perfect binding. So you can send it out or you can learn on a tutorial. We had a few people do their own books and their own gluing, and it still turned out really well. So, and then you bind it that way. 2 of them get bound. 1 stays as a loose leaf copy because 1's never going to be opened. You're going to self-mail these guys, all of them. 1 of them you keep closed because if you get challenged and you go to world court, you have to have 1 that's not opened to
Okay.
prove that that other person does not have, your usurper does not have access and is usurping, and you're the true heir to whatever it is that you're the heir to. We don't know who belongs to where and how and why because it's all been misconstrued for thousands of years.
Yeah. So it's only the father side. You don't do the mother side.
It's automatically in the mother side will automatically be put into your estate packet, but for them it has to be
Oh,
the father side because they're the race that is usurping over us is masculine, and that they're just the keepers of the exit document right now. So you got to kind of do it their way. If you do it another way, you're going to be put back into the baby trust, and I've seen it happen.
okay. And how far back do they want you to go? Like, do you
Just the
go?
day of your birth.
Oh, I mean, like when you talk about like lineage, father's lineage. Do
No,
you?
they
Is it
have
like?
everything on you. Your discovery
Oh,
of your
okay.
lineage, yeah. They already know who you are. They know what you're worth, what your titles are, what planet you belong to, who you bred with. They know everything about you. You're the only one that doesn't.
Okay, because I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so I've already done the genealogy tract, so I'm a step ahead.
Oh
But
no,
wait,
those
how
doors
many?
open. You go further back. You can get back to Adam and Eve. You can get back to the angels. I got back to the angels. I got to Adam and Eve. I got past Adam and Eve. Um,
I did too on my dad's
yeah.
side.
Well, your mom's side, I've gotten to everybody. But you've got a minimum of 29,000 ancestral inheritances that they have to give you. So that
Huh.
your family legacy did not get. It took 29,000 people to make you. Let's put it that way.
You know, that kind of makes the life sound a little more precious and not worth throwing away.
Right. But it's about the journey, the adventure, where you're going. And I'm not saying forgive people that committed horrible crimes against you. Let the military deal with it. Why fight anymore if you don't have to? You know what I mean? Because I'm a fighter. I'm like, let's fight. We can fight this out. But why? I'm tired. I'm broke. I'm young and I'm broken. And that hurts, like getting up in the morning. I'm like a 1979 Buick Century trying to warm my engine just to go pee. It's terrible. And I'm only 45. So that there's no need to fight. Once you figure out how to get out, you're at peace. The war stops. It's kind of scary. Like I get worried, like, because when I was growing up, if a good thing happened, here comes the bad stuff in like threes, right? I'm
Right.
fighting every day, and then I've got that trauma of just nonstop fighting, and then when somebody tells you, "Hey, the war is over," it's not over for me. It's still there. So if I don't physically see that the war is over, the war's not over. I'm gonna keep fighting. But I saw it when I did the master exit. It was, I took on the world's kings. Who does that and survives? I'm like, wait a minute. I called out 148 king of kings in the world. And then I took on, the elites. And then in August, and I was a little freaked out. But I'm
Oh, I
still
bet.
here. It's not
And
black magic. It's not. I live in black magic, okay?
yeah, I
Black
think that
magic,
comment came earlier.
yeah, black magic, that's the shadow realm.
Yeah,
Well,
I
you
think
have
that
black
came in.
magic comes from the dark sun. It's healing alchemy. If used right. If used wrong, it's not good. But that's anything. If you have medication you want to heal yourself, you know, use it as it's intended. You overuse it, that's where it becomes wrong.
Right. And it's kind of ironic that you talk about the battles that you went through because I wanted to take a moment and say, I know you're a veteran of the services, so I wanted to say thank you for your service.
Oh, thank
And
you.
as you mentioned the other wars that you went through, I wanted to say even more so thank you for doing that for us.
I'm not the only one. There's more of us, but I appreciate the support. Everybody's done it. You just got to remember.
Yeah, it's so thank you to everyone who's done it and is going through it for us. And I just call you out with it because you're the one who I know and has come forward. And so it's like, yeah, you're the name I know. So it's like, I want to thank you. And it's like, I don't mean to exclude everybody else. But
No,
yeah.
I that's not what I meant.
Oh, I know. I
I'm just
just
doing
say,
my job. No.
I know. I just wanted to be clear for it's one of my little quirks is I like to be transparent. And so it's like, yeah, it's when I do something, it's like I want to make sure it's understood.
Yeah, I appreciate
But
it. Thank you.
thank you for coming on and sharing all this with us. And you had mentioned when we were talking earlier about the Matrix rehab tour and how some people didn't get to see it, and you were saying that there is a way that they can watch it. So, do you want to share that with them?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, adonaofsoul.us, you do become a member, because it's in my members page, or you can go to Journey to Truths. He has a link also, and you just buy the video off him. I have a lot of more exclusivity stuff coming up. So again, it's just your choice. There's two ways to watch it. As of right now, I'm working on an international link for other people, because I do have a international group that uh, I guess they have restrictions from U.S. stuff because of, well, I'm not going to say the current administration, but there's things going on. Uh, so
Yeah,
I'm working on an international partner that can, put that out there for people in other countries. Um, so as of right now, it's at my webpage, adonaofsoul.us, and if you want to email me, it's deprogramming@adonaofsoul.us. or Journey to Truth has a copy on their Rumble as well.
So very cool, and thank you. And I
You're
do have
welcome.
to say as well, thank you for compiling all the information that you do and that you're sharing it with us, because I have to say, like you say, there's 200 at least races out there, and it's like overwhelming when you try to look at who's who and going, well, some people say this about them, some people say that about them. So it's it's one of those where it comes down to, who's right. How do we know who's right about who's who? Because there's so many disinformation out there, and I don't even think they realize that they're being used for disinformation, or maybe they do. I don't know. But I appreciate that you take the time to compile it. You even have a photo if it's available, and say
Right?
this is who they really are. And it's like, and so it's so helpful when, because you hear these names and you're like, well, who are they? And it's like nobody ever really says, who's who and where they came from, where they went, why they were here. But
Right.
you do. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. There's a delivery guy here. Sorry, that's what I'm watching. I'm like looking around. He's in the back window. I don't know if you guys can see. Nope, that's the light. He's somewhere back there. So, well, I appreciate you having me on your show, and yeah, I'm excited to bring this stuff forward. And yeah, the CIA was at the last one, and it's fine.
Yeah, and I wonder, when they send agents or whoever they're sending to these events and people call them out, I wonder, do they sit there and they're like, yeah, whatever, no one's going to believe we're really here? Or are they like, Mary, stop telling people we're there?
No, it's how we present it, because when people are stuck in the old presentation of it, they're inciting a fight, like, oh, they're eating us, they're eating us. Well, they were, but they're not now. So we're the reels are being replayed so the deep sleepers can try to wake up. Other people can try to wake up. So those that have already seen it need to move on to the next level. Be there, be supportive to everybody that's waking up. Like I said, it's like rehab. We were all on the drug of illusion. So that's why I said the rehab tour, because we can't be mean to the people that are just now waking up, because we were in those positions. We were the ones freaking out. And we were the ones that looked at like crazy. And now we're not. We're not crazy anymore. So
Right. It's always funny when it's like I talk to people in the paranormal community when I'm meeting people that are new, and they're like, why did you take the time to, go over like 101 stuff with that person? And I was like, because we were once them. And we forget that we're now the seasoned people who the 101s are looking to say, hey, can you help me understand this and get a foothold and, understand what's going on so I can move forward? And it's so easy to forget that, yeah, we were there once ourselves, and everybody tends to go, nope.
right? So my car just died, so I'm gonna have to get running because I still gotta go pick up my nephew. Oh, there it
Right.
goes. Maybe.
And you're also in possible snow conditions. So,
Yeah, we
yeah,
got a storm coming in. It'll be okay. Uh, hold on. Yeah, I just gotta sit for a minute. So
I was
yeah,
gonna say,
we'll
I
get
hope we
there.
didn't kill your battery. I hope we didn't kill your battery doing this.
I did. I thought I had the car on and I only had it partially on, but that's all right. I have a battery charger. I just need to go grab it and bring it over. It's already hooked up
All
because
right,
my
well,
nephew was using it.
so we'll
So
let you do that and let you get back in before the storm hits, so you're safe and everything. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for taking the time and sharing with us.
you bet. I'm glad anytime. I appreciate you guys having me. Um, and I hope I could have answered as many questions. And I hope to see people in Vegas if they want to come out. I'll have the dates. It's either going to be this summer or fall that we do that one. So maybe we can plan ahead. I don't have a date yet. So,
Well, we'll see if that can happen, and if not, will it be live streamed again?
yeah, I'll have a live stream on my webpage, and Journey to Truth will also have one. And anybody else who wants to come out and live stream it. Everybody's got to have it to ascend. So
Very true. So thank you, and have a wonderful week, and enjoy. And I hope your nephew did well.
me too. Well, thank you very much, Michael, and you guys have a great night.
Thank you. You too, and stay warm.
Thank you. I will.
All right. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.